Hello and welcome to the Quarantined Wargamer. I'm Big Lee, and today I wanted to talk about a subject close to my heart, writing a wargaming blog. So you got up this morning and you thought, I want to write a blog. Great, but how are you going to do it? So what I thought I would do is I would list you off a few of what I think are some essential things to think about when writing a blog in general, but in particular writing a wargaming blog. Now, obviously this is my opinion based on my experience. Other bloggers may have different advice. I'd always advise you to go and look broadly. But hopefully I can give you some tips if you're thinking of starting off writing a wargaming blog. So one of the first things the first thing I think you should really be thinking about is what platform do you want to run your blog on. Now, most people will be familiar with blogs on systems like Blogger or WordPress or something very, very similar. And the likelihood is you're going to want to write a blog using a platform that you're familiar with. But I would really urge you, it's worth having a look at the different platforms and seeing how they work, getting some feedback and some ideas, finding out what the pitfalls of different systems are before you go for it and pick one. Because once you've set yourself up and you've got a blog started, there's a lot to learn about how it works and how to master that particular program. But also, once you've been writing for a while, although you can usually transfer your content onto a new platform, you may then have to spend a large amount of time reformatting everything to fit the format that you've gone for, that you've changed to. So definitely it's worth trying to get this right from the very beginning. So do a little bit of research and pick the platform that you think is going to provide you with the options that you want. The next big question you need to ask yourself, and again, this is one that perhaps people don't always think about, is pick the name of your blog first. Right? This will help you not only to define what your blog is about, but it's something that will stay with you and your blog for many years to come, hopefully. So, be very careful about what you do pick. I would always suggest going for something that's short and punchy, original. Unlike mine, when I chose my title for my blog, Big Lee's Miniature Adventures, it sounded like a good idea at the time. Well, I'm stuck with it now. 10 years, 11 years later, I'm stuck with it. Saying that, I'm quite happy with the title that I've got, but I would say that, try and be a little bit more original than I was when you're coming up with a name for your blog. Preferably something original that says something about the nature of your blog, what it's about, and more than just I'm a wargame blogger. Then I think the next important question you need to give some really serious thought about before you even start putting ideas down on a page is, what is your publishing schedule going to be? Now, this may seem like an odd one, something to think about later on, but I actually think it's an important question to ask, because if you want to do daily posts, unless you've got a lot of time, those posts are likely to be short. Maybe they'd be better suited to another platform like Facebook, for instance, rather than an actual blog. Plus daily posting. I used to post daily when I originally started my blog. It was I posted on every day, and I kept that up for about a year and a half, 2 years. It killed me. It got harder and harder to find things to write about, and I wasn't happy with the content that I was putting on my blog. I then made a choice to go to a slightly more flexible timetable, which basically meant as and when I could think of something, or had something to paint and present on my blog. And again, that hasn't really worked. In the last 6 months or so, I've tried to be very strict. I post on a particular day, I put videos out on a particular day, I have another post hopefully second time in a week. So I'm trying to go for 2 blog posts a week and 1 video a week. But there's always room to add more if I really need to. But the point is that strict timetable helps me to keep on track, gives me a target to stick to. Now, if you're going to do weekly or even bi-weekly posts on your blog, then maybe you should be looking at longer, more detailed, more well-researched and presented articles. So daily posts probably better suited to the likes of Facebook. Longer posts better suited for weekly or bi-weekly entries on your blog. Now, when you go on sites that say tell you about how to write a great blog, they're usually geared towards businesses or somebody trying to sell a product, and it's all about driving up customers to drive up revenue. And one of their big tips is always write for your audience, because you're selling a product. It's not just the product or the service that you're providing, but the blog itself becomes a product in a way. Whereas writing a blog for a hobby is slightly different, and I would really strongly urge you to write for yourself as well as your readers. Because if you're not enjoying it, you're not going to keep it up. And it is a balancing act between what your audience likes to read and what you enjoy writing about. But give some thought to that before you start churning out content, but certainly make sure that you're picking stuff that excites you, because it will show in the way that you word things. It will show in your articles and in the pictures that you use. I think it's also important to use the bio section that sometimes comes up on one side of the blog that says a little about yourself. Now, a lot of people just put, "Hi, I'm Joe and I do this and I play these games," which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I would also urge that the bio section is a really useful place to say what your blog is really about. It's like, in a way, to use a horrible business type phrase, it's a mission statement. It tells what is the purpose of your blog, what sort of content are people likely to see on your blog. Now, not only is that useful and helpful to new readers who want to get an impression of, right, is it worth subscribing to this blog and coming back here again, but it's also useful to you, the writer, because if you find yourself struggling to think of what you need to write, or straying from your original core purpose of your blog, maybe it's time to write a different blog or to write on a different platform. So I think that it's also useful to you as well as your readers. Now, the next thing I think you need to do is really decide on the style of your blog. What will and won't be included. So, for example, are you going to be fairly relaxed about swearing, for instance, in your blog articles, or not safe for work pictures? It may limit your audience. Now, you may be fine with that, depending on what the focus of your blog is, or who you think your audience is. But if, for instance, you're writing games that are predominantly played by, say, for instance, the Games Workshop crowd, so a younger audience generally, maybe you could be limiting your potential audience because of the content. So it's something to consider. Now, I say there's no, I don't think anybody's decisions in that respect are wrong. If that's what you like to see on your blog, then fine. But do give it some thought before you go down that route. Another thing to think about as well in terms of style is what sort of font and layout are you going to use. Now, you want something that's fairly easy on the eye. So, for instance, the old-fashioned black screen with white text can be quite harsh when you're trying to read a large piece of text. Now, that might work for certain types of settings, depending on the font you use. A lot of blogs nowadays go for a more realistic, if you like, white with black lettering, so like paper or other colours. Background graphics can sometimes be quite hard to read the text on, so give that some thought as well before you start going down the route putting fancy pictures in the background of all your text. And then, as I've mentioned, you've got font and layout, but you also need to consider the general colour and colour scheme, and maybe a header banner for your blog as well. It really helps to stamp your personality on the blog and make yours stand out. Now, you may be using a pre-designed layout for your blog. Now, there's lots of different templates, particularly I know, for instance, I use Blogger, and Blogger's got loads of different templates for their blogs, and you can pick a template, and many bloggers may be using a very similar template, but then by the time you finish customizing it, changing some colors, putting your own header on, and so on, and you can really make your blog look individual. So again, it's worth giving some real thought about the color scheme and the banner that you're going to put, along with things like what's the background going to be like, and what's the font going to be like, and what will and won't be included in the body of the actual blog itself, what you're going to write about. Now, my next tip is simply entitled "A Picture Says 1,000 Words," and it should be pretty much self-explanatory. We play a very visual hobby, so why not use loads of pictures on your blogs? Now, there's nothing wrong necessarily with just word-only blogs, but they're going to be less attractive to a hobby that is so visual and as our hobby. Now, pictures automatically make some posts more engaging, and a good picture can really enhance the words. So if you've worked really hard writing a really nice article, why not enhance it with some photographs? Now, well labelled pictures can actually attract readers to your blog, because when people are looking up a list of search, they put a search term into Google, for instance, and it comes up with a list of sites, and they see a photo that links to a site that they're looking for. That can help attract them to click on your link rather than somebody else's. And also, when you're looking through a blog roll with loads and loads of different articles, you might not want to read them all, but you go, oh, that picture looks interesting, that looks like something I'll be interested in to read, and it's a way of hooking in your readers. So it's well worth using that. And if you try to use your own pictures, and I'll come back to this in perhaps a later video when I talk about copyright and using your own photos now, but I would say try to use your own photos, because I can't think of one way that you could more express your own personality on your blogs than using your own photographs. Now, another tip, one that I've repeated lots of times to different people, is I would really advocate that you work on more than one post at a time. So for instance, when I'm writing my blog, I normally have 4 or maybe 5 posts at various stages of completion that I've started writing. In fact, when I start a project, say I'm painting a model or I'm working on a piece of terrain or some other larger project, the first thing I do before I put paint to brush or brush to metal is I will start writing an article. I'll come up with a rough title, put a rough framework for what the article is going to be about, basically announcing the model that might not be completed for 2 or 3 weeks or however slow I am, because it gives me plenty of time then, not only to schedule when I'm going to post stuff onto my blog, but also to do some research and put extra information on. Now, anyone who reads my blog will know that often when I post pictures of miniatures, particularly historical miniatures, I'll usually put a little bit of history in there. Something that I've looked up online or found from one of my many books. And I'm trying to write an article that's a little bit more engaging than just, oh, look what I painted, which is fine. If you want to do short articles, that's great, but I like to do mine slightly more in depth, and so I will include a little bit of history as well. And rather than leaving that right to the last second, I finished a model, I really want to get it on my blog tonight, oh crikey, I've got to write an article now to go with it. Well, by the time I finish that model, I finish that post, it's already ready to go, and all I need to do is insert the photographs that I take of my brand new miniature that I finished. The one big advantage of this particular process is you always have something for a rainy day. We've all had those times when productivity is low, we've not got much to go on, maybe work is getting in the way or family life is getting in the way, and we haven't been doing much in the way of gaming or even reading. And if you've got some posts that are sort of pre-written, something that's up your sleeve, you can always go, right, I can finish that off and I can at least post something this week while I sort of get back on track with my hobby. So I find it really useful to have several posts at various stages of completion at any one time. Now, once you've started to write your posts and you've started to post stuff, I really would suggest that it's important that you be part of the community. Now, we all talk about our hobby as a community, and we usually have friends down the club or people that we see regularly at shows. And I do think it's important that one of the reasons perhaps that you're writing a blog, you're getting out there on social media, you're putting your photographs and your models and your work out there, and that's because, presumably, you want to be part of the community, so try and do so. Link to and read as many other blogs as you can. They're a rich source of inspiration. There are some fantastic blogs, and I'm constantly finding them. Now, I've been blogging for coming up for 11 years now, and I routinely follow well over 400, I think it's more like 450 blogs at the moment. So I spend more time lurking than commenting, so my bad, I really should comment a little bit more, but I do follow so many blogs. But I'm still finding some really great blogs that have been around for years, and some of them will have free material on, pictures, painting techniques, tutorials of all different kinds. Such a rich source of inspiration, and maybe a conversation about a particular subject will start on one blog and will inspire an article of your own. So I really do think it's important to be part of that community. Now, following on from that, I would say you really need to encourage feedback. So always activate the comments for your blog. Now you could do it as moderated so that you get to review them before those comments go up, if that's what you want to do. It's a bit harder when you've got large numbers of comments coming in, a problem I have never had, I'm afraid. But if you do activate comments, beware of trolls. They will eventually land on your site, and the age-old adage, don't feed the trolls, definitely applies. I mean, if someone is being deliberately and antagonistically quarrelsome or trying to get a rise out of you, don't feed the troll. I would personally, I used to leave those articles on there and show that I was better than them by not getting involved in an argument. Problem is while I may be able to keep quiet, other people won't, and then that troll gets what they wanted all along, which is some attention. So I tend to delete those sort of things. I don't delete challenging comments or people that may disagree with me, but I do challenge those. I do tend to delete those posts, those comments, where I know that they're not just disagreeing with me, they're deliberately trying to get a rise. And the same goes for things like spam emails. They should automatically, most blog formats now will automatically put those spam comments in a separate folder for you to approve, or otherwise I just delete those. I don't think my readers need to see links on how to buy a McAfee or some other dodgy website or whatever. I don't want to see that in my comments, so I delete those. But I do think it's important that you treat trolls and spam very vigilantly. It is unfortunately a chore, but it goes with the territory. If you're going to run a blog, you're going to end up having to do some blog maintenance, and that means, keeping an eye on troll comments, deleting spam, and generally doing some regular routine maintenance as part, not just writing a blog, but maintaining it. And then one of my last proper pieces of advice would be get social. Push links to your blog, your articles out to as many other social media sites as you can, because all those backlinks to your blog will increase the rating of your articles on Google search, for instance. And not only that, you're helping, I think of it as you're helping other readers, potential readers, to find your blog or find the articles in the format that suits them. So if somebody uses Tumblr as their main social media, they can still link to my blog, they click the link and it'll bring them back to my blog. If they only respond to things that come up on Facebook, they can still find that link to my blog post, click the link and it'll take me back to my blog. And the same goes for Twitter and so on. So not only am I making my blog as widely available as I can, but I'm also making it easier for potential readers to read and engage with the content that I've produced. And then the last rule I would say is be prepared to break the rules, right? I mean, if anything that you're doing isn't working, then you need to reevaluate what you're doing. So that might be reevaluating, do you really need to write those sort of articles? Have you got the right theme? Do you need to close this blog down and start a different one? Or do you need to just change things entirely and switch things around because your hobby interests have changed? Now, when I started writing my blog, I was largely I was doing wargaming, but my primary activity at that time was role-playing games. I'm still playing role-playing games, but I'm writing more about wargaming and terrain building now, because that's how my hobby has developed over the last 10 or 11 years. And there's nothing wrong with that, because my catch-all title, Big Lee's Miniature Adventures, is a very broad church. It covers a lot of different activities. But if you've written if your blog is specifically called John's 6 Mil Wonders, and you start playing in a different scale, then maybe you need to start a different blog or change the title of your blog. Now, having given you my top tips, if you like, for writing a wargaming blog, what I would point you to is a piece of research that suggests that web developers have a 5-second test for any web page. Do visitors to your page linger for more than 5 seconds? Because if they do, they're much more likely to then stay on your blog article for longer and maybe look around elsewhere on your site. And if they don't, you get a lot of people who might click a link and land on an article of yours, and they didn't intend on reading an article about how to build terrain. But now that they're there, can you engage them enough for them to stay and read more? You might be potentially bringing someone new into the hobby. So think about the tips that I've just given you and whether they help you to pass that 5-second test. So for instance, are you using the right platform for your audience? Does your title attract the right type of audience that you want to speak to? Does your publishing schedule encourage subscribers to return? Will your theme help you to maintain and communicate your enthusiasm to your audience? Will your editorial decisions limit your audience? Are you using the right pitches to hook new readers into reading more of your blog and perhaps clicking onto other articles? Is your next article really going to be the best you can be? Or maybe you've got something else that you're working on that you can put forward first. Are you building an audience from your community? So like-minded people who are likely to stay and want to read more of your content. Does the feedback you receive demonstrate that there's a level of engagement amongst your audience? Are you spreading your message on social media? Are you getting people coming in from other sites? If the answer is no to any of the above, then maybe you need to think about breaking the rules. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting. I'll say, I don't by any means suggest that I know everything about wargame blogging. I don't. I've just been doing it a long time, so I have some hints and tips in there. I hope you found that of some use to you if you're currently thinking about plunging into the wonderful world of wargame blogging. So I hope you enjoyed that video, and as always I'd say if you did enjoy it, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to my channel, and please leave some comments below or over on my blog, Big Lee's Miniature Adventures. So until next week, keep well, keep rolling high.